where you are. Yes, sir. Get on the formula.
This is Appetite for Distortion.
Welcome to the podcast, Appetite for Distortion, episode number 275. My name is Brando on this Guns N' Roses themed podcast, looking at life through Guns N' Rose colored glasses. And later on, we're going to do one of our GNR themed segments, Appetite for Discovery. We are going to meet Mack Mullins of the band The CEO, which features Vince Hornsby of Sevendust. And Mack has a really cool story. He is literally a 50-year-old CEO with a badass rock band now that features a member of Sevendust. And his 6 degrees of GNR Bacon involves Elvis. Not that Elvis. So stick around for that. But first, another connection, to be honest with you, never occurred to me. But when the opportunity, I'm like, oh, I can interview danifilth of Cradle of Filth, and I got to go look to see what 6 degrees of GNR Bacon there are. So we're going to talk to him about that. And also, another genre, I could have done a podcast, honestly, about horror. Other than Guns N' Roses, I think about this at times. You know, what can I talk about endlessly? You know, we're in our 275th episode. Horror movies, The Simpsons, but horror movies for sure. And I've said it ad nauseum. If I ever get to talk to interview a lot of it will be about horror movies. Sorry. But danifilth is involved in this new horror movie called Baphomet, which if you love Satan and you love gore, like I do, I don't know if love is the right word, but I love horror, and it's a fun watch. It is a truly a fun watch. So we're going to talk to danifilth of Cradle of Filth on the AFD show. Hey, Dani, how are you?
Hello. Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
So I just watched Baphomet, and I really enjoyed it.
Cool. Awesome. Well, that's always good news, isn't it?
Sure, because I'm a huge horror fan, and, you know, not that like I'm anything special, but I always have it takes a lot, I guess, because I feel desensitized after I've seen hundreds, if not thousands, of horror films, and there's plenty to enjoy in Baphomet. So if you can tell me, how you joined this project.
Well, it was kind of strange, really. The director, Nathan Harris, was a massive Cradle of Filth fan and had often come to see us in Dallas. And I just received an email one day saying, "Look, I'd love you to be. I'm doing my own movie. It's taken a few years, etc. I'd like you to be a part of it." And I read the synopsis, and I thought, well, this looks a lot of fun. He's a really nice guy as well. He actually flew over to England to shoot my scenes, and used a cameraman of mine. And we just hit it off. We had a really good couple of days while he was here. We've seen each other a few times since, naturally, in Dallas. Just keep in contact, and that was pretty much it. It sounds pretty simple.
Okay.
And I guess it was.
Because your scenes, and you can maybe tell me, because they seemed were they shot during the pandemic? Because they seemed like they were just on Zoom, and everybody else was in the room with each other. So I guess how are your scenes shot? Because he
flew. No, this was. I shot my stuff about 3 years ago.
Okay.
And I literally was doing a bit of method acting, because he said, you've got to look a lot older than you are, and I was like, okay, right. So I just stayed up all night and didn't shave, and
Okay.
But no, they weren't done on Zoom. They were filmed actually in his hotel.
Okay.
A very nice hotel in South Kensington in London. Wasn't so nice, the room, after we got to it, because we literally just emptied it. Everything sort of kind of went up against the walls and everything, much to the hotel's distress. And the funniest thing was that we all went out for celebratory drinks afterwards, and Mason came home quite inebriated back to the hotel, and it was like, oh no, everything, my bed's up against the wall, so he ended up sleeping in the bath.
That sounds like a horror film in itself.
Doesn't it?
What is your, if I can ask, what's your favorite horror of all time? Do you have one that's like kind of maybe special to you that when you saw when you were young, Dani, when you were a little Phil?
Well, I'd say, I mean, the thing that kind of really turned me on from just being a kid and being into monster movies, into fully fledged horror, I suppose, was American Werewolf in London.
Okay.
Just because I'd seen a bit of John Landis had directed Michael Jackson's Thriller, and I watched the making of Thriller, and it showed a few clips. So I asked my dad to hire me the video, and it was the first film that truly scared the crap out of me. So obviously I hold it a little dear to my heart. I really also like, God, when you ask somebody their favorite, it's like asking their favorite album. It's literally impossible. You can just run a list of about 20 films off. But also a massive fan of Bram Stoker's Dracula, just because of the timing of it and incidents and, people that I knew around that time. And I adore the soundtrack.
Are we going to see you in more horror films going forward?
Possibly. We did our own movie quite a while ago, back in 2000, in fact, called Cradle of Fear. And I've done a few voiceovers for cartoons and such forth. But yeah, if the opportunity arises once more, absolutely.
Okay. Cool. Because you see people like Corey Taylor do a lot of like their own horror films, obviously Rob Zombie. So it would be fun just to kind of see this rocker bracket of horror films kind of of
course. Rob Zombie's just been given the green light for the Monsters,
right?
Which is intriguing. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but hopefully it's a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. If anything, I heard Butch Patrick, who played the original Eddie Munster, is going to be in it. So hopefully he'll oversee it. Make sure. Exactly, right?
Yeah,
right?
and fantastic, yeah.
And speaking of horror, I mean, if you can tell the name of the podcast, Appetite for Distortion. So there's a what I call a 6 degrees of GNR Bacon, whatever the connection is to my guest in Guns N' Roses. And, I actually tagged when I promoted you coming on and Baphomet, I tagged Slash and Del James, their tour manager, who both are big horror fans. Del James actually liked my tweet. But if I can ask, what connection to GNR that you may have? I know you've played a couple download festivals, and you had an awesome T-shirt that said Parasite City, right?
Yeah, that was one off. Yeah, no connections. I suppose I presented the award with Duff McKagan, his daughter, a few years back at the Metal Hammer Awards.
Okay.
And I've met Duff before as well. I'd say that was my only connection, really. And he's a really nice guy. So gone quite well. Played a few festivals with him. Never played a festival with GNR, though.
I thought there was it wasn't on the same day, but there were a couple download festivals, I believe, that you were on the same bill, because it was a listener of mine.
Oh, maybe they were. It wouldn't be on the same day. I think it was. Oh, that's right. Yeah, that was the year that the people rioted because Axl Rose took about 2 hours to get to stage.
How long does it take you to get ready to go on stage? Obviously, with all the makeup and everything. How long does it take danifilth to get ready for a show?
Ideally, about an hour and a half, 2 hours. The warming up and makeup, or just being prepared for it mentally, putting all the costuming on, visiting the stage, eyeballing the audience, getting a feel for it. But I've been known to have a panic, 20 minutes, 10 minutes. At festivals, you've got to be ready, otherwise your set gets cut.
True. But you obviously must be excited to be, now to kind of turn to music and the future of Cradle of Filth, because you've been announcing some festival dates, right, coming up? Yeah,
that's in the wake of our new album, which is coming out later this year. I mean, we finished it last October, so this is the biggest gap between an album being finished in the studio and it actually physically being released. But obviously we're in the midst of a pandemic and we're holding back, trying to bring it up as close as damn it to when we actually get back to fully fledged touring. And there's I mean, I can't talk about it right now because it's all in, God's hands, as it were.
Sure.
But we have a bunch of dates for the latter half of the year.
Oh, awesome. And I got to say, when I started my radio career, which I can't believe, I guess I'm going to count 20 years ago in college. So I started out in college and I had a metal show every Thursday night called The Aggressive Edge. And that's where I really became familiar with Cradle of Filth. So I can easily say Cradle of Filth, one of the first bands I've ever played on the radio. And it's been so long. And so it's an honor to really speak with you because you're an icon of that genre. I mean, so what have you seen in maybe your genre the past 20 years? Do you feel that Cradle of Filth has become more accepted in the community? Because obviously you're always been kind of like an outlier, which is, I don't know, I'm assuming you kind of want to be.
Yeah, I guess it's a bit of both, really. A lot of people consider us as, I wouldn't say sellouts, but moving, I don't know, appealing to more than one genre and doing things a little bigger than our genre might physically allow from time to time. And other people probably looking in, probably think it's quite a small thing. It's very hard to speak about one's own band, but we're doing well. We're doing better than ever. We've got some great management behind us now in the shape of Des and Anastasia Fafara, which is the Oracle management. New album coming out. There's a lot of exciting things. We've got beer. We've got some wine coming. We've got new merchandise, all kinds of weird and wonderful things, jewelry. It's an exciting time. I think the pandemic, we were very lucky with it in respect to the fact that the studio we were using was quite close to where I live. So I was able just to spend a lot of last year just toying with the record, trying new stuff. We had our busy years, like three years of just touring the world incessantly just before the pandemic struck. It would have been awful had it been the other way around. We would have been completely bored by now. But, it was, I hate to say it, but I actually enjoyed quite a bit of last year.
Me too. I'm not going to lie, because right now my equipment is set up in my apartment. I'm talking to danifilth. So it's been okay. Obviously, it's been bad to undersell it for a lot of people, but it's been good. I'm glad it's been good to you as well. Dani, I know you got to go. Thank you so much for your time. Baphomet was amazing. Congratulations, and I hope we get to do this again.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, that'd be great for the new record.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Dani.
All right, cheerio. Bye.
Cheerio. See, he could say that. I said to my fiance the other day, like the English have like the coolest language. They just know how to express themselves better than us Americans. And she's like, so talk like that. No, be a poser. No, I can't say cheerio without looking like a douche or wanting cereal. And it's also amazing that sometimes the most evil looking people, danifilth of Cradle of Filth, and my coworkers, my boss were, if you don't know, like that was a shorter interview because it was through my job at Premier Radio, iHeart. If you know the podcast, I won't overly explain that whole deal now. But they're like, oh, we have an interview opportunity with danifilth of Cradle of Filth. Like they had no idea. They're like, oh, Brandon likes him. Great. It was so funny. But they're always the nicest people. I love it. So just don't judge a book by its cover. And speaking of which, not judging it by its cover, because if you look at the trailer for Baphomet, it's not the most high end, horror film. But I think if you're a horror fan, you don't really look for that. Some of the best horror movies ever are B movies and just poorly made. And so anyway, I guess I could take credit for this. As I mentioned earlier, I tagged Del James in the post about this upcoming interview and about promoting Baphomet, and just in hopes that Del James, he usually does respond. Slash never does to me. I guess I'm one of the untouchables there. I think I'm one of the untouchables. Actually, you know what? No. Duff McKagan has been liking some of my tweets lately. The ones that I tag him in with photos, so they're just like very generic. But he's acknowledged me. So is that a good step? Anyway, so that's why I randomly tweeted Axel and Slash, you never know. So I tagged Slash and Del James in my post about Baphomet, and Del liked it. And then I see Del post, and if you follow him on social media, and it's been a lot of fun as a horror fan and a GNR fan. He really does have a great social media presence because he's been posting all the movies he's been watching during the pandemic. And shortly after he liked my tweet, he said, the 177th movie I've watched since the world changed was the occult horror movie Baphomet. So he writes, I was really hoping for a so bad it's good film, but got a so bad it sucks flick instead. Oof. Oh, that was, I felt bad. I was like, oh man, like, did I recommend a bad horror movie? I mean, again, it had its, is it the best one I've ever seen? No, but I honestly did enjoy it. I was not lying to Dani. And I responded, haha, well, there was a couple good gore scenes trying to find a middle ground with Del. And Del wrote, the shark scene was fucking awesome. So think about that. We're talking about a satanic, occult film, and there's a shark scene in it. So there's definitely some great, awesome scenes in that film if for whatever reason you don't like the entire thing. So anyway, so that's Baphomet. So that's enough of new horror. Let's talk about new rock. And we do that with the segment we like to call Appetite for Discovery.
I just want very appetite. That's the goal. Very appetite.
For Discovery.
Appetite for Discovery, the segment where, you guessed it, we look for new music because we're waiting for Guns N' Roses to put out new music, but there's plenty of good stuff out there. And I'm really excited to talk today with Mack Mullins, which is so much to break down, the CEO. So right away, before I heard the music, which is awesome, before I knew anything about, I was like, Mack Mullins, he just sounds famous. Did you get that ever?
It sounds, you sound famous or you sound very, very Irish, one of the two.
Oh, fair enough. No, to me, I was like, it just sounded famous. And then the CEO, that's a cool, and I preface with this word shtick, but right. It's not a shtick. It's real. That's what I loved even more. And so I don't want to obviously tell your story. So Mack, if you could kind of tell us how you came to bring us up to date a little bit, because you guys have a great story and I want to learn more about it and the rest of us to learn more about it.
Just a simple farm boy from Virginia, that grew up a huge heavy metal fan. And, from the time that, I got my first Kiss record in 1977 and put that on, I'm like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen and heard. And, I must do this with my life. So that, it's probably the same storyline as half of the people out there. But, for me, it was, I fell in love with the music at that point, and this is what I was going to do for the rest of my life. Well, as you can imagine, those things don't always work out that way. It's especially on the timeline that you would expect them to. So sure. It's just a matter of, okay, well, I'm going to keep playing music, keep writing songs, in band, but I'm going to go to college and I'm going to get a job and do that kind of thing. And I'm going to run these things parallel because, one does not negate the other. So it was, fortunately for me, I was, successful in business way before I was ever successful in music. So once you get to that point in the music career where you're starting to get some attention, you're starting to, put out debut albums, you start thinking about things like band names and, image and who you are and that type of thing. And I thought it just best is to, really just say, hey, this is who I really am in real life. I'm the CEO of a company. I'm a business guy, but I'm also, a hard rocker too. So let's combine the two, kind of play it up a little bit, and hopefully people will look at it for what it is. It's more of an attitude than a job title per se. It's an attitude around, being the boss of your own life. So I think it just lent itself to today's rock and roll.
And let us know how, what you grew up in foster homes, right? I don't know what that's like. So that's got to be very difficult to stay grounded and to kind of find your path to get started in life, right?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, for the first 7 years of foster homes, so you imagine, you're bouncing around from home to home, that type of thing. And, no real sense of, purpose or who you are. But, the one thing that I had that, really kind of took a lot of the stress or the drama around that type of living was music. it was an escapism. And, to this day, it still is. I mean, it's a way for us to, you take a lot of the drama from the last year and you put on your favorite album or a new record, and for some reason that kind of stuff just goes away. So it has been there my entire life, and it has been a fire and a fuel that has pushed me for years. And it's nice at 50 to finally be talking to folks like yourself about the music that you've been writing.
And take me again. I want to go back a little bit because it's a world that I'm not familiar with, but I'm just very curious about because I admire it. Was there like any sort of, because growing up, I'm the oldest of 4 boys, and for the most part, we all like the kind of the same music. I definitely have the most passion, I guess, for it and rock, but there was never really any music fights. What about growing up in like foster homes? Were you always the rock and roll kid, kind of like the outcast, or what was that like? Do you think that kind of shaped your musical taste as well?
Well, it's weird because, there wasn't a lot of music being played. There wasn't a lot around. It was a relatively sheltered type environment. You don't know what is out there, what's in popular music. I mean, it's there's a lot of hymnals and that type of thing. And of course, I was always very attracted to the guys on stage and the church band. But you don't really know that it's there until I got adopted, and the whole world opened at that point. I mean, music was being played, and it was it was all different kinds. And of course, I gravitated to the big show, the big bands, and I was studying stage sets and liner notes and who was on what label, and it became an obsession of mine at a really early age, music. So it was like whatever it took to be one of those guys on that stage, I was going to do it.
That's awesome. So I guess when music was around, what influenced you early on? Like what bands or what artists? Because you do have a very, your voice is not common. You have a very unique voice. I was very happily surprised when it came out. You see this guy who looks like a CEO. Your video is The Redemption, which we're going to get into, of course, with Vince Hornsby of Sevendust. And you're very clean cut. And I was like, all right, what kind of voice is going to come out of this? And wow, what a powerful voice. So I'm curious of, maybe what vocalists when you were younger, did you kind of maybe emulate or who really inspired you when you were younger?
Yeah, I mean, when you're young like that, and a lot of times you're influenced by the stuff that your parents listened to, and my adopted parents were big Elvis fans, and I was immediately attracted, not necessarily to his voice, and which is obviously great. It was the his outfits and how his charisma and his stage presence, and I'm like, wow, I mean, these rock stars are bigger than life, and of course back then with social media not around, I mean, these artists weren't as accessible to you. I mean, they lived mysterious lives, and so I was very attracted to guys like that. And then of course I mentioned Kiss was a big influence on me early, and again it was another act with with lots of flamboyance and big stage show and that kind of thing. And it wasn't, I initially wanted to be a drummer, but living in a small farmhouse with 3 bedrooms, being a drummer was not an option, and neither was being a guitar player for that matter. So it was just a matter of my folks said, okay, you want to be a rock star, then why don't you be a singer? Well, they probably regretted that for quite a few years. Me running around the house, trying to sound like Robert Plant.
Right, there you go.
So then of course in the 80s, everybody, the higher you sang, the better it was. And, so we spent a lot of time, i.e., Axl Rose, when he came out, it's like, how can I emulate that sound and doing this and that? And then, and eventually you find your own voice, what works for you. And this is what I sound like, and what's comfortable for me. So, it's certainly early on, it was all of those, those big voice guys that, were bigger than life. And I wanted to be that.
So I got to use what I call the 6 degrees of GNR Bacon, obviously Appetite for Distortion, using everything, looking at life through Guns N' Roses colored glasses. So you mentioned Elvis. You've worked with Elvis. Not that Elvis, I know. So if you can talk, because it was the guy who works with Slash, right?
Yes.
Michael Baskett. So
Yes.
he worked on your upcoming album. So is that your only 6 degrees of GNR Bacon, or do you have any other maybe connections or stories, perhaps?
No, I think that's probably the closest. I mean, literally,
good one.
Slash was there the week before we came in to record, you know, and of course, his guitar is there. He's left a lot of guitar picks laying around. You walk into the studio for the very first time with a guy like, you know, Elvis Baskett, whose, you know, resume speaks for itself. The platinum records are on the wall. And you're standing behind a microphone that Miles Kennedy sang on, you know, a week or so before that, and playing the acoustic guitar on Black Arts that Slash uses. So extremely intimidating at first, but working with a guy like Elvis is, I mean, he is so cool and so great at what he does. That intimidation goes out the window after about 10 minutes. And then you're just one of the guys. And it was a phenomenal experience. I mean, the guy's a musical genius in my personal opinion, but he's probably one of the coolest guys I've ever met. He's that cool.
So how did you hook up with Elvis? It's funny you're saying that. And also Vince Hornsby, of course, from Sevendust, who I mentioned. You know, how much is he featured on? Is it just the song, or is he a member of the band? Like, tell us about his involvement in the CEO.
Yeah, okay. I have to back up a little bit because they kind of connect to each other. But
Okay.
You know, I put together another iteration of the band a couple years ago and wrote an independent record just to, you know, kind of get my jollies out, if you would. And we did a record release party here in Atlanta. And of course, you know, Vince lives here and he's like rock royalty here. And he came out to hear us play and he loved it. He thought it was great. And he said, hey, I'm going to send you down to what we call Camp Elvis and see how you guys do in a proper studio. So he sent us down there and we cut. He said, I'm just going to send you down there for a few songs just to see how you guys do. And we did. We went down and cut 4 songs. And before we were even done, Elvis is calling up Vince going, hey, you're not only your boys doing really, really well down here, but you're coming down and you're joining the band as the bass player.
Nice.
So that's the circle of what it was. And he did. And so the first 4 songs, you know, he's not on those, but the balance of the record, you know, he is. And, you know, it couldn't have been a better or a cooler process because he's definitely in the band. He's a super guy and we love him. So.
Very cool, because you never know. Like, I know he was involved obviously a lot with the band, but when touring, which seems to be back, it is back with somebody who has a few big bands like Slash. You know, speaking of which, it's hard to kind of balance that out. So you might get like a different touring person with. So I guess if we could talk about that, what's the future, because it is absolutely great. So Redemption is out
June 25th.
June 25th. So we got some time.
Yeah,
okay.
A couple singles are already out. The video is out, but the record will drop the 25th.
What would you say for people who maybe are just discovering you? Because obviously you're big in Atlanta, and I got to say, as a Knicks fan, that hurts a little bit because I don't know if you're a sports person.
I am a sports person, and trust me, you got way more rings than we do. You got to let us have one, right?
Oh, that's sad because the Knicks haven't won well before I was born.
We got to get something down here, man. We're dying.
Yeah, and I got to say, you know what? As a New Yorker, what do you say, an Atlantean? Like, how do you? Okay, all right. Wow, I made that up. I gotta apologize on behalf of my Knicks fans because they were awful to like Trae Young. The things that they would chant to him, it was awful.
You know, you got to expect that from Philly and New York, though. We know that. You know, that's part of the game. You
I'm
know,
classier than that.
Mess with us a little bit, right?
I guess I felt so bad when they're all like, Trae Young's balding. I'm like, oh man, I'm sensitive to that too. Like, oh, awful. So sorry. I had an opportunity as a representative of New York, clearly, to somebody from Atlanta, to say that. But
it's all good.
So tell us more about like who else is in the band that make up the CEO, and do your business ventures in like all your different business your companies kind of mirror the kind of style you bring, I guess, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think so. You know, obviously we were approached, you know, the music business as a business, and, you know, I guess that kind of helps in certain ways. But then again, at the same time, you know, I'll be the first to tell you, we don't know shit. So this is our first time around the ride. And we look to guys like Vince and Elvis and, the management team to kind of show us what it is that we're supposed to be doing. And, I've got, 30 years in business. I know that, the trading business, that kind of thing really, really well. I don't know the business of signed rock acts the way that, these guys do. So, right now, eyes wide open, ears wide open, and, we're just kind of taking it all in.
It's going to be curious with somebody with your knowledge and experience to speak about, once you really go through it, the music business that has obviously been very highly criticized and has been changing, just to get your viewpoint on it at some point once you're in it. But it's amazing that you're in it now. You're living this dream, already a successful person. So yeah, the debut album, June 25th, via Rat Pack Records. Very cool. It's very awesome to meet you, Mack Mullins, and I can't wait to see you. Is that the plan, to be out on the road and tour? Like how?
Yeah, Sevendust is out right now. They'll be out June, July, August, and then a little into September. So obviously, once they clear the runway there you go. There may be some opportunity for us to jump on a couple shows with them, but obviously they've got a tour planned. They're doing that right now, and then when they come back, then Vince and I and the group can get together and start looking at festivals, tours, that kind of thing we can pop onto.
Awesome. So when you come to New York City or Long Island, somewhere in my area, I'd love to meet you and just rock out to the CEO. I'll wear a suit and tie.
You'll be the first one we call, brother. Trust me.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us. We appreciate the support very much.
Thanks for hanging out again for another episode of Appetite for Distortion on this GNR themed bar mitzvah party of a broadcast. And I will tell you some upcoming guests that we have. Josh Todd will be making his guest appearance. That might be the next episode, okay? And another guest I'm really excited to finally announce. If you follow on social media, facebook.com/the AFD show, on Twitter @the AFD show, Instagram, I already posted, he's coming on. Sendog from Cypress Hill. Yeah, Sendog from Cypress Hill will be on the Appetite for Distortion program. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And any upcoming guests, again, if you want to be part of the episode, if you want to, just ask questions, always submit questions. But if you want to be a guest co-host, always doing that. I may do that for Josh Todd. I may have one of you be my co-host for that upcoming interview with Josh Todd. First time it was just me and Todd over the phone. Me and Josh over the phone. And now it's going to be on Zoom. So I may give one of you a Zoom interview experience with Josh Todd. So always be on the lookout for who's upcoming for interviews, so you can be a part of it, so you can be a part of the show more than you already are, because there's no way I would have gotten to 275 episodes without you, the listener. So thank you. And there are new people finding us all the time, so please tell a friend. That's how we get bigger and bigger and bigger, and that's how we're going to keep getting more awesome guests and talking about Guns N' Roses during the whole process. And just looking forward to talking all summer long as the tour picks back up, I guess you can say. Anyway, that does it for this episode of Appetite for Distortion. When will you see the next episode? In the words of Axl Rose concerning Chinese democracy, you'll see it, I don't know, as soon as the word.
Thanks to the lame ass security, I'm going home.